Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
You need to be aware of this one. If you didn't read Dakota Free Press this morning, there's two things that have been added to it. It is the funniest Dakota Free Press that you have seen.
Did a guest author come on this morning? I missed the funny.
The Pace Picante Sauce video is on there. And singing, three sailors singing New York, New York. And I have never laughed so early in the morning and so hard and said, I can't believe that this is Cory's blog, but it just fit what the blog said. So, and I don't know about you, but I kind of like the motto, fired up, ready to go. Not just 12-24. So, this is what we're doing today. This is a card for the King of South Dakota Bloggers, awarded on the 15th of January to Cory from members of the Democratic Forum. I did this on behalf of all of you. This card is a congratulations card, and it sort of looks like Cory. You've always stood out from the crowd, and here are all the little spaceships, and there's a starfish. So this is serious part.
I love spaceships, thank you.
This is the ultimate goofy part. If you ever get lonely, writing your blog, Minnehaha County Democratic Forum is with you. You can take it out of there, but it doesn't hurt.
You want me to show everybody what's in the box here?
This is the king.
Whoa. Build up and then you
I don't know if it's a dog or a mouse or is that the one, but there's the king. Congratulations.
Thank you, Melanie. I was just showing pictures. I know a little girl back home and a little dog who are both going to wrestle over
Yes.
this. Thank you very much. Well, I'm still spinning over that. I'm trying to figure out King of Blogs in South Dakota, if that ranks above or below the King of Liechtenstein. I'm not sure where that fits, but I am very happy with the honor, Melanie. I appreciate the recognition. I appreciate the fact that so many people in here actually take the time to read the things I write each morning and get a laugh out of the videos I post every now and then. And I'm very grateful that this forum chooses to support my blog with its monetary sponsorship. I'm happy to put your meeting announcements up every week. And your sponsorship, every dollar helps. The money you give me, that helps me spend more time at home. Sometimes picking out, finding the Pace Picante Sauce video. Sometimes getting on the road to Pierre. Sometimes doing the research, going to the courthouse, getting the court documents, paying the 20 cents a sheet or whatever it is to get those. Support like that helps make the blog possible and helps make the blog better. So I really am grateful to all of you for what you do with that. Thank you very much. Just to check, can you hear me back there? Yeah. Can you hear me back there, Zach? You still get me on the camera there? I need to get this thing out of my hand. Because when I teach speech, I tell the kids, you need to be able, oh, see, there it is. You need to be able to use your body. And I'll do an exercise with the kids when I teach speech. I'll say, today, kids, we're going to talk about body language and how important it is. I'm going to show you what happens when I try not to move when I speak. And when I do it, I always have to show them that I have to clasp my hands behind my back, because if I don't, they will move. They will come out. And I stand and try to give my usual speech lecture to the kids, saying, well, now, as you can see, body language is very, and they're like, oh, your eyebrow moved. I'm like, be quiet. It's very important to be able, your knees moved. I'm like, don't mess with me. When I teach speech, I demonstrate to students how hard it is for me to stand still. And after about a minute, I'm back to this, and it's got to be out there. So even just having a microphone in my hand and having to stay like this, oh my gosh, I just can't do it. So I'm glad you can hear me back there. I apologize to the people in the front who will get shouted at and spit on, but it happens. I tell my kids in speech class too, if the front row of kids is wet with spit, you get an A because you've made yourself clear. Thank you very much. Now, I really am going to talk about political stuff today, because that's what we all come here for, grilled cheese and politics. There's a great panoply of things to talk about, as Tom pointed out. My plan is, and I never make a very good plan. I'm not like the Russians in Hunt for Red October. I just kind of make stuff happen. But I want to talk about the two teacher pay plans we have before us, the difference between the governor's plan and the Democratic plan. I'll talk about why the governor's plan, yeah, it's okay. But the Democrats' plan, of course, is better. And I'm going to give you three main reasons why it is. If that doesn't get me too crazy, I'll take a little time to talk about candidates. And we got a couple of them right here. Bless you, Mark, and bless you, Ellie. Any other legislative candidates in the room? Tom, bless you, and anybody else who's up for it. If I've got time, I'm going to segue from the teacher pay plans to the things I think Democratic candidates need to say this year to take back the legislature. Not just get 1 or 2 seats, but I think we could actually get a majority in one of the houses. Senate might be easier. It's been done before. Remember, as recently as 2010, Democrats lost 9 seats. I think it was 2010. If we can lose 9 seats in the Senate in 1 year, I think we can gain 10 seats in a good year. And this is going to be a good year. We're going to talk about that if there's time and if I don't get distracted by more cute animals and other stuff that pops into my head. So, hand gestures and distractions all, let's go. Teacher pay plans. I share Mr. Cool's amazement at the fact that somehow I woke up and found a Democrat in the governor's office in South Dakota in 2016. This week, Governor Dennis Dugard, who is sure to be called a rhino by my friends Stace Nelson and Gordon Howie any day now, Republican in name only, the rhino. This week, conservative Republican Governor Dennis Dugard endorsed 3 major things that my ragingly liberal Democratic blog has been talking about for years. Governor Dennis Dugard said, corruption in this state is a problem and we need to do more. Governor Dennis Dugard talked about the Gear Up scandal and the Mid-Central Educational Cooperative and the scandal that happened out there in Platte. He said we need to have better controls over that. Governor Dugard went on the radio on Wednesday on public broadcasting and said the fact that Scott Westerhouse, a public employee, the fact that he created this web of subcontractors and corporate entities and then hired himself to carry out the duties he was already supposed to carry out as a public employee, Governor Dugard called that, quote, ridiculous. Ridiculous that a public employee would create corporations and hire himself to carry out his public duties and double dip. Boy, why didn't Governor Dugard say that in 2014 when Yote Bollin's self-dealing came to light on that? But he said it! He said it! Even if you come late to my party, I'm glad you came. Here's a pop. Thanks for being with me. Governor Dugard says corruption's a problem. That's a Democratic issue. That's what we've been talking about for years. Finally, Dennis Dugard takes us seriously. Second big thing that he talks about is the Medicaid expansion. That's been going since December. But he said this week, he admitted in his State of the State address that expanding Medicaid is, like the buttons say, the right thing to do for South Dakota. He admitted it would help give people health care. He admitted that it would create awesome economic stimulus as we bring in hundreds of billions of dollars from the federal government. He didn't talk the numbers, but if you go back to my blog last year, I've got a post, I've got the numbers, I've got the study that says Medicaid expansion in South Dakota would create 29,500 jobs. Medicaid expansion will create 29,500 jobs in economic stimulus. And Governor Dugard admitted that in his State of the State address. Just for perspective, yes?
I apologize, but we have a waitress that's...
Oh, sorry.
They forgot to take their number. It was a chef salad with chicken strips and french fries. A chef salad with honey mustard.
Y'all better call it, because I'll eat those chicken strips.
Chef salad with honey mustard. And chicken strips with french fries.
I'll take the chicken strips and french fries if they want.
I know somebody already ordered it.
Okay.
I apologize.
It's all right, Jim. Chicken strips are important. I deeply respect chicken strips. 29,500 jobs. For perspective, if you go back and look at the Department of Labor numbers for the Mike Brown's administration from 2003 to 2011, South Dakota under Mike Brown's administration created 28,000 new jobs. Now, I know there's reasons to expand Medicaid like, oh, helping people not die. But, oh my gosh, in one policy action, Dennis Dugard could create more jobs like that on the federal dime than Mike Brown's created in 8 years. Boy, if Mike Brown's can get elected senator on his record, Dennis Dugard could get elected President of the United Nations for expanding Medicaid with a stimulus like that. But the point is, Republican Governor Dugard admitted not just a Democratic argument, but the obvious facts. And I tell you, getting a Republican to admit the facts, that's something. That's progress. So there we go. Holy cow. So we've got Governor Dugard talking about corruption, the way we Democrats have been for years. We got Governor Dugard talking about Medicaid expansion, the way we Democrats have for years. And we've got a conservative Republican governor who now admits that being last place in teacher salaries nationwide is not acceptable. That being last place in teacher salaries is a threat to the integrity of our public education system, and that we have to act not over 5 years, not over 10 years, but we have to act this year. He threw down that gauntlet and said, we got to make that jump this year or our education system is in peril. Democrats, we've won an argument. We've won an argument that the Republicans have denied for 30 years. They're not going to admit it, but we can admit it to ourselves and pat ourselves on the back. Our logic has prevailed. We might as well have a Democratic governor. It'll be nice to have a real one in a couple of years. I won't endorse yet. But for now, boy, it looks like we're close. It looks like we're close. We've almost got a Democratic governor. But now here's the thing, and let's talk about the teacher pay plan specifically, because I've, as a teacher, as one who's worked in education all my life, as one who cares deeply about education and South Dakota and my fellow teachers, as one who weeps inside, I don't weep outside, I'm not that schmaltzy, but who aches to see good teachers I know saying, I can't afford to do this, I'm going into welding, or I'm going into Minnesota, or I'm going into something else. It thrills me to see that after 30 straight years of being last, dead last, ashamedly last, not even close to 49th last in the country, that we've got a Republican governor who admits we've got to do something. We've got to raise teacher pay, and we've got to raise it. He said $8,500. He said we've got to raise taxes to do it. We've got to change the formula to do it. In a way, it is a bold plan. In a way, it's not, and I got to dig a little bit, because the plan the governor gave in his State of the State address on Tuesday is basically the same plan that the Blue Ribbon panel published on November 11th. It's the same plan that on November 11th, when it came out, the governor said, well, you know, we'll have to see. It depends if we'll do this. He impanels a task force to tell him what to do, and they put out the report, and he just kind of wishy-washes when it comes out. Now, Tony Van Huysen, our friend Tony Van Huysen, told me I was silly to criticize the governor for not endorsing that plan right away. He said, the governor, you know, it's the day of, he needs time to analyze it, we need to come up with our own proposals, we need to figure out what we're really going to do here. And then 2 months later, he basically just says, yeah, what they said. As we know, folks, it takes time to get Republicans to admit the facts and do what they really ought to do. I guess we got to wait 2 months for the governor to read a 20-page plan and say, yes, it's a good idea. The only thing the governor really substantively changed from what the Blue Ribbon panel recommended was the pay target. The pay target. Blue Ribbon panel said they wanted $48,000 as the target, minimum target salary. The governor wanted to look good, so he said, let's make it $48,500. Okay, more money. That's from Grandpa Cheap. That's a good thing. I'll take every penny we can get. But now here's the thing. The governor's plan is inferior. It is not the best plan compared to the Democrats' plan, which is out there. The Democratic leadership, the press conference led by our Senator Billy Sutton from out in Burke, they put out a plan to also raise teacher pay. It is better, and I'm going to tell you why in 3 main points. I'm going to tell you why the SDEA, thank you for the press release on Tuesday saying you really like the governor's plan. Now I want the one that says, and you know what? The Democrats' plan is better, let's fight for that. I'm going to give you 3 main reasons the Democrats' plan is better. And it's not just because Democrats are smarter, cuter, and faster. It's because the plan is actually better. The Democratic plan offers teachers more pay. The Democratic plan offers a better, I will argue, less regressive tax scheme to fund it. And the Democratic plan, unlike the Republican plan, does not require that we get rid of teachers. Better money, better tax scheme, we keep all our teachers. Here's the details. I'm going to play numbers. If you read the blog, you know I love videos of paste picante sauce, and I love spreadsheets and numbers. So here's the numbers portion. We'll do New York City later on, but right now we're going to do the numbers. The average teacher salary in South Dakota on the numbers that everybody's using, including the Blue Ribboneers and the governor, is $40,023. I want my whiteboard. $40,023. Now that's a 2014 figure. We're 2 school years past that. By my best fiscal guesstimations, nobody has the data on what the average actually is right now, do we? If we do, shout at me, hold it up. Nobody has the data right now. My estimate is it might be 42,000. But here's the thing. On all the data that's out there and all the comparisons we're doing and all the projections we're doing, we're comparing to other states and what they had in 2014.
A little bit of GDP.
So even if ours has gone up since 2014, so have the other states, it's all moot. So we go to 2014 numbers. $40,023 is the average pay in South Dakota. The closest salary of any adjoining state is North Dakota, where it's $48,666. Like I said, we're not even close. The national average is in the 50,000s. The governor's plan says let's go to 48,500. That's nice. That's a 21% pay increase for every teacher in the state on the average. But it still leaves us in the basement. It still leaves us behind North Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, Minnesota, and Iowa. It still leaves us at the bottom of the region. The point here is to create a competitive teacher wage. Governor Dugard's vision of competitive is to see the pack way up there and to run a little bit faster so we're still behind everybody smelling their sweat socks, but we're close. Now he's really thinking like a Democrat. He's thinking, boy, we're never going to win, so I guess we'll just be happy being in last place. No, Dennis, that's not the Democratic stuff we want. We want optimism. We want to believe we can actually win or get in the middle of things. The Democratic plan does that. The Democratic plan says, hey, you're raising it from 40 to 48.5, great. Just pour on a little more, and we can get to 50,000. $50,000 is an average teacher salary in South Dakota. Jump from 40 to 50 in 1 year. Oof. That's spicy stuff. That would get the job done. And most importantly for this point, to say why our plan is better than the governor's, 50,000 puts us in the middle of the regional teacher salaries. At 50,000, we beat North Dakota, Nebraska, and Montana. We'd still be behind Iowa and Montana and Wyoming, but we're in the middle. Now, if I'm running a race and I'm running behind everybody, and then I pour on a little more gas and I get in the middle of the pack. Sorry, you're really getting the shout today. I get in the middle of the pack. I'll work the other aisle. I get in the middle of the pack. I feel competitive. I can make a real argument to the crowd saying, hey, I'm not the guy in the back. I'm in the middle. I'm beating them. Come work for me. We need a competitive wage. If we mean what we say, let's get a competitive wage and let's go with the Democratic plan of $50,000 that puts us in the middle of the pack. You want to be bold, be bold. You want to dream, dream big. You want to make it happen, make it happen. Go with the Democratic plan, go with that $50,000. It's a real competitive rate. Not just us sitting in the back of the pack, but us getting into the middle of the pack and poisoning ourselves to compete for the teacher candidates that we need. So, Democratic plan beats the governor's plan on the pay level. Second, Democratic plan beats the governor's plan on the tax structure. Now, this is the prickly stuff. And I'm going to grumble a little bit. Both of these plans are not bold in their fiscal plan. Both the Democrats and the governor are saying, well, geez, it's going to be hard enough to get people to support funding teachers. We better just stick with the sales tax and not have an argument. Because the sales tax, if we're going to pass any tax in this state, that's the one that at least has a shot. I understand the political realities and pragmatism of not saying income tax. Income tax. Don't say that or people will throw stuff at you. Except not in this room. Thank you. I understand the political realities and the difficulty of just getting the governor where he is, let alone asking him to reform our entire tax structure. I understand why pragmatically nobody's talking about anything but sales tax. The regressive sales tax. Here's the difference. The Democrats and the Republicans are both supporting a regressive tax for this plan. The governor's plan raises the state sales tax 0.5 percentage point from 4% to 5%. It raises about $110 million. The teacher plan doesn't need $110 million, so the governor gives $40 million of that tax increase as property tax relief. We take it out here, and again, we take it out of the sales tax bucket and we put it in the property tax relief bucket. The Democratic plan, as I understand what Senator Sutton put forward, needs more money, so it raises the sales tax a full 1%. Uh-oh, more regressive tax. State sales tax goes to 5%. But as the Democratic concession, we say let's get rid of the sales tax on food. Obviously, I don't need to explain to many people in the room why that's a superior plan, but I worked on this in the car, so I'm going to say it anyway. If you're going to raise the sales tax, it only makes sense to then do something to that regressive tax that alleviates the burden on the low-income people who pay more, for whom sales tax is a greater practical burden than for rich people. One of the easiest ways to do that, short of asking you to show your pay stub at the grocery store and pay a varied rate each time you pay, no, that's just crazy. Don't do that. The easiest way to make the sales tax less regressive is to reduce or remove the sales tax on a purchase item that affects the poor proportionally more than it would the rich. Low-income people pay a higher percentage of their income for groceries than do high-income people. High-income people are out there buying watches and fancy clothes and this and that, and that's great. Please do keep buying, keep the economy going. But most people spend about the same amount on their groceries. Rich people don't get to eat twice as much as poor people. We'll discuss that.
Better not me.
They better not be. It's not right. Food riots. Let's go. But get that fire up. Really, removing the sales tax on food is a built-in way to reduce, not get rid of. Sales tax is still stinky. Sales tax is still regressive. What about work boots? What about practical things everybody needs to buy? What about your broken window you got to fix? But by removing the sales tax on food, Democrats are saying we recognize the regressive nature of this tax. We recognize the increased burden we're putting on low-income and middle-income working families by increasing it to 5%. Therefore, we're going to take the sales tax off the food. I think that's a fairer, less regressive way to do it. The governor does not. The governor on the radio Wednesday, he addressed this idea. He's afraid of us. He knows we Democrats have good ideas. He's having a tough enough time accepting these other ideas. Governor Dennis Dugard said, repealing the sales tax on food does not properly target the low-income folks for assistance. Republican conservative Governor Dennis, I'm going to need support here for a moment. Republican conservative Governor Dennis Dugard said food stamps are a better program for helping low-income people than a tax break. Am I still in South Dakota? Did I fall into an alternative universe? A Republican just said welfare is better than tax breaks. I don't know whether to kiss the governor or kick him, but it's fascinating. I can kind of see the logic too. Yeah, food stamps, that makes sure people can eat. That may be better than a sales tax break. But the point that sales tax is regressive isn't just about helping folks who are in poverty. It's about helping everybody up the scale enjoy a more balanced burden of taxes based on what they can afford. So the Democratic plan to raise the sales tax a full percent for more revenue, but to give back more in terms of the food tax exemption, that's a better plan. You got to support it for that reason too. I got to stalk around. My third point is around here somewhere. I'm looking around. Thanks, Tom.
What money is that?
What's that?
What money is that?
The Democratic plan, if it raises the sales tax 1 percentage point, they say that will generate $220 million more dollars. The food tax reduction then, and I apologize, I don't remember the number, but I think what that ends up doing is knocking off like maybe $100 million from the total. The Democrats still collect more revenue to pay for the higher teacher salaries, but it'll be on the order of like $110, $120 million that'll go towards teachers instead of the 80-some million the governor's talking about. Okay? And there's more numbers I can get into, but I didn't bring my spreadsheet. I don't want to have too many people have to get the calculators out. That's a good question. The third reason we need to support the Democratic plan over the Republican plan. The third reason it's better, oh wow, I really did forget. It's one of those moments where you're up in front of everybody and you're so excited it's there. It is the fact that we don't want to lose teachers. I shouldn't have said I forgot it because it came right to me. The fact that we lose teachers. A couple more numbers. Both plans, the Republican and the Democrat, changed the funding formula to be based on the number of teachers rather than the number of students. But not really. Both plans propose an ideal student-teacher ratio. Both plans then give money to schools by looking at how many kids they have, which is what we do now, But then instead of giving them money for each kid, $4,877, whatever the per student allocation is right now, about a little under $5,000. Instead of giving them a certain dollar amount per student, they're going to take the number of students, divide by that student-teacher ratio, and then give the schools a certain amount of money per teacher. Practically speaking, what that means is when they fund this out in Pierre, instead of giving about $5,000 per student, they're going to give about $70,000 per teacher. Okay? Now, you hear that, you go, wait, the teacher salaries are only going to be $50,000, what's the $70,000? That's all the other costs of running a school. Administration, supplies, operating costs, etc. It's messy fiscal stuff, and we'll break the spreadsheet out later. But basically, they changed the formula to be based on the number of teachers. The problem is this. Right now, the average student-teacher ratio across South Dakota is 13.9 kids per teacher. So basically, this table and you two ladies would get one teacher. And then that chunk back there and Jim would get another teacher. That table and Bruce and Scott would get a teacher. There'd be, I'm just spitballing this, but based on the number of people in this room, we'd have 6, maybe 7 teachers. Statewide, 13.9 students per teacher. The governor's plan, you do all the math, the governor's plan would set an average teacher-student ratio, or student-teacher ratio in South Dakota of 14.5 to 1. We go from 13.9 to 14.5. Now, you may not notice that difference in one classroom or one specific school, but statewide, if we want the governor's plan to work, if we want to reach the target salary of $48,500 per teacher, we're going to have to cut 400 teachers out of our 9,300, 9,400 workforce. 400 teachers have to go if we're going to reach the governor's goals. Now the thing is, the governor doesn't say the schools have to reach the goals. The governor's going to give the schools money based on his ideal ratio and say, hey, if you want to hire more teachers than I think you should have, that's fine, but understand we're not giving you any more money and you're not going to be able to reach the target salary. And I'm okay with that. I like the fact the governor hasn't mandated how the schools spend the money. The Democrat plan doesn't either. But I'm just talking about the math. The governor is only appropriating enough money to reach the target average salary for this state if we get rid of 400 teachers. We already got rid of a couple hundred during his last round of cuts in 2011. We've already had schools stripped down to bare bones and get rid of OTEC programs and arts and all that just to meet the standards and meet the other budget cuts that we've been crushed under for the last 30 years. Now we're being given one more deal where it's like, okay, we'll finally raise teacher pay, but you got to get rid of 400 more teachers. Nuts to that, says the Democratic plan.
I apologize, I got to step in. Does SDEA know that wrinkle on, and they still support the governor's plan?
Well, the SDA issued a press release on Tuesday saying they look forward to working with the governor. I can't speak for SDEA. I'll let them resolve how they feel about that and whether they're ready to endorse a better plan. But the Democratic plan funds $50,000 as the target salary and funds it under the assumption that we keep the student-teacher ratio where it is, 13.9 teachers or students per teacher, and we allow schools to keep every teacher they have. Now, that's still not perfect. The way the formula works, even under the Democratic plan, there may be some schools that aren't able to get to that level. There may be some schools who are different, this and that, but I'll tell you this, under the governor's plan, under the student-teacher ratios they've set, my neighbor Elisa Sand up in Aberdeen did an article this morning. She checked 23 surrounding districts around Aberdeen. 20 of them out of 23, 20 of them out of 23 would have to cut staff to meet the targets the governor has set. Under the Democratic plan, it's not going to happen that way. Democrats are willing to fund $50,000 as the statewide average salary for every teacher that we have now. Democrats are willing to fund a plan that gives teachers the pay they deserve for the work they've been doing, for the work we've been chiseling them out of for free for 30 years. And on top of that, the Democrats say we're willing to give that to every teacher we have. We're willing to fund this without taking opportunities away for kids. And I will say this as a teacher and as a friend of teachers, Every good adult in the school is an opportunity for kids. Every good adult in that school is an opportunity for a kid to ask a question when they need to turn to someone for help when they need to get a college recommendation, to get a job recommendation, to talk about what's going on at home. Every good adult in a school building is an opportunity for our kids, a resource, a gift, an investment in our kids. And every teacher that we say goodbye to and take out of the system is a reduction in opportunities for kids. And that's why you're going to call SDEA this afternoon. That's why you're going to call your legislators. That's why you're going to call the governor. And you're going to say, Governor, I appreciate your efforts, but the Democratic plan is better because it makes us actually competitive in our wage. It taxes people more fairly, and it preserves and protects not just every job we have, but every opportunity that our South Dakota kids have right now. We've got the wealth to do that. Now let's have the will to do that. Let's pass the Democratic plan and make this state work. So, I think we're all clear. The Democratic plan for raising teacher pay is the bold plan on the table. The Democratic plan for raising teacher pay is the plan we want. The Democratic plan for raising teacher pay is the plan that we need to hold to and say to the governor, you've come this far, you're getting us to the back of the pack, just push a little more. You can do it, Dennis. You're already almost a Democrat. You're already almost one of us. No, don't use that one. Don't use that one. I do. It's on video. Go for it. You know what? Here's the thing. Dennis is going to get so sick of Americans for Prosperity and the Prosperity, Progress, Poop, whatever they stand for, whatever the Koch brothers doing. They're going to be riding his case so hard on Medicaid expansion. He's going to catch so much grief from all the Gordon Howie isn't it, but I always think of Gordon Howie and Stace Nelson, the Lance Russells and the Jeff Monroes from Pierre, and Staltzer from here in Sioux Falls, and all those guys, and the Don Haggers going, boy, this doesn't feel like conservatism, Dennis. We got to be able to run. Lee Schoenbeck in Watertown. We got to be able to tell our donors we're fighting Obamacare. We got to be able to tell our donors that we don't like those darn teachers and their uppity attitudes, and you're going helping all these people? What's the matter with you, Dennis? He's going to catch so much grief on that Dennis might actually like a Democrat coming up to him softly and saying, we got your back, Dennis. We'll help you out. He's going to hear so much shouting from those other guys that he might actually appreciate knowing from us Democrats that we'll support him. But we got to tell him, we'll support you if you do the right thing. We'll support you if you go big. Go 50K, Dennis. 50K, 5%, cut that food tax, keep every teacher we've got because they're good people. Thank you for letting me expound on that. That's a huge issue for me. Teacher pay has been something I've blogged about from the beginning. I've been making these arguments that we're shorting teachers, even on cost of living. Governor Dugard has even ceded that argument. A lot of people say, oh, well, South Dakota's cost of living makes up for it. I've run statistics on cost of living for the last 10 years saying, no, actually it doesn't. And Governor Dugard admitted that in his State of the State address. So even that argument is off the table. All we're arguing about now is, are we going to compete with the neighboring states or not? Let's make that happen. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for supporting what I do. I'll be happy to take your questions or be told to sit the heck down, whichever you prefer. Thank you very much. 15 minutes? Cameraman Bruce, what's on your mind?
Well, through the video lottery and all these other programs that South Dakota's had, we've always promised to spend the money, the extra money that's developed, that comes in, it's going to be for education. It's always for the kids. And then after a while, we just sort of get a little fast and loose with the bookkeeping and the promises, and now it gets dumped into the general fund, and there's or something else gets slid over in place of it, and all of a sudden, you know, we're only going to use this pot of gold over here to do this, and then it's the pot of silver, and now it's going to be the pot of lead. What's going on? You know, what are we going to do to make sure that the sleight of hands don't happen?
You know, that's a very good question, Bruce. And I hear a lot of people talk about the video lottery stuff. I've even seen, I mentioned Lance Russell, one of my favorite Black Hills Yahoo conservatives, but sometimes he's a good guy. He said he was going to propose a bill saying we should do exactly that. We should revisit video lottery, and we should dedicate that money from video lottery to this teacher pay plan we're talking about. Now, even there, consider, Lance Russell says we should raise teacher pay $75 million. That's progress. That's an alternative universe where we can get Lance Russell to do that. But the problem with his plan is, okay, great, Lance, you take that $75 million of video lottery money. Which other program that it's already dedicated to in the general fund are you going to cut to fund that? That's a key part of the governor's thing. He's like, whatever we're going to do, we need new revenue to make this happen. We're not going to slaughter some other program to make this happen. As Bruce says, though, well, we can say that with the sales tax now. Yeah, suppose we pass this plan this year. Oh my gosh, who's to say that next year they won't whittle it back down and that that extra penny or half penny sales tax won't go to another state plane or restarting EB5 or God knows what, or more Europe stuff. Who knows what's going to happen? And that's the problem that comes then is, well, democracy is always work. What we need, if in the ideal world, Dennis watches this video on South Dakota this weekend, and you know he watches South Dakota, Tony will watch it and tell him, brief him on it, and then Dennis will say, well, okay, yeah, we should do the Democratic plan. Heidelberger's right. Yes! It could happen, it could happen, it could happen. Just keep saying it, it'll make it true. Donald Trump tries it, I'm going to do it too. It could happen. Even if that plan passes, there is a point here. Even if that plan passes, the work is still going to be ours. It's going to be Mark's, it's going to be Ellie's, it's going to be Tom's, it's going to be every candidate's to go on the campaign trail and say, folks, we just did a great thing. We increased teacher pay, we increased taxes to do it. Now we've got to send watchdogs to Pierre to make sure it stays that way. We got to send watchdogs to Pierre to keep the foxes out of the hen house and make sure that money stays there. I know that's not a solid answer. There's no statutory way to do it. But that's what we got to do. We just have to send legislators who are committed to keeping that money where we promised it would be. And to remind everybody, that's the promise we're making this year. Yes, Jim?
I just have to say, I was a negotiator for 18 years, former teacher. The hardest thing, and I know it came up in a blog this week, the problem with teachers is they only work blank months out of the year. I was a negotiator. I sat across the table with board members, and I said, I get paid for 180 days. I never got one paid holiday. I never got paid for that summer break, and it's the most bogus thing in the world. 100 years ago, kids had to stay home and help their fathers on the farm, bring in the crop, or what in the hell they did, I don't know. But why we have to have it, I always said, put me on the same schedule as your administrators. I'll work 12 months out of the year with, of course, holidays paid for and vacation time. Sure. And they never took me up on it. And it's a phony argument. Don't let anyone persuade you that because teachers, and by the way, in the summer, I could never claim I could never get unemployment compensation. A carpenter working in the winter when he's laid off gets unemployment. Not teachers in the summer.
You're mowing lawns or painting houses. I know what you mean, Jim.
Yeah, real professional jobs, hanging from a ladder.
Well, and on that, Scott and I, Mr. Harrisman and I had this conversation yesterday too. What we need to say to people is, there's a whole separate argument about whether teachers only work 9 months a year or whether they work extra. Or what. We can have that argument, but right now what I tell people is this. Even if you want to believe teachers just work 9 months a year, go ahead and believe that. Doesn't matter. We're not comparing teachers' work weeks to the welders or the folks serving us lunch here today, bless them for their hard work and all that. We're not making that comparison. We're comparing teachers who work 9 months here in South Dakota with the teachers who work 9 months in Minnesota, Iowa, North Dakota, and make 20 to 40% more for doing it. That's all that matters. That's the only labor market comparison that matters. If you want to talk about a year-round school year later on, we can do that. But this debate is about competitive wages in the teacher labor market. So the 9-month argument is bogus and irrelevant. Don't let them do it to you. Roger, my friend, how are you?
Since there's no guarantee this has to go to the teachers, if you're a school board member and say, we already cut enough staff, and we want all the staff to have the same percentage raise, how much would the raise be then? Like 46, 47,000 or?
Roger, I had someone else ask me that this morning too. And that's a good question. I don't have a quick answer. Every school in the state has a different salary scale. Sioux Falls is up towards the top. Spearfish, where I work, they had pretty good pay. You go up to Rutland, I don't know if they're still the lowest in the state, but they're pretty low. Their average pay, I don't know if they'd even crack $30,000 a year. So there's a lot of variation from school district to school district. And you've got, teachers, starting salaries, a lot of starting salaries are still in the 20s at some of these small schools. It's a bad situation. The money there, the state is not making a mandate, and the Democratic plan doesn't make a mandate. And honestly, I'm not sure it should. I don't think what we want is I don't think it'd be politically saleable for the state to say there is now a statewide South Dakota salary schedule. But 48,000 is the average, and starting is below, and seniority is above. I think that's a mess, and I think every school board in the state goes, whoa, horse, we're going to decide what our people get. And that's, in a way, I'll play Republican and say that's kind of letting the market work, and that's letting local control work. That's letting local districts say, okay, we got a new pot of money. Do we want to use that to raise every teacher's salary in this building $8,000 this year, or 10 if we do the Democratic plan? Do we want to use that to hire back the VOTEC teacher we had to let go so we can meet these vocational education requirements the governor's been talking about? Do we want, they'll have that discussion. But keep in mind, Roger, if this plan passes, there are going to be 9,362 teachers, and then a lot of parents and a lot of legislators and a lot of people in town who are paying more sales tax who are all going to turn to their school board and say, what you going to do with that money? In an ideal world, I always have this idea that everybody's going to pay attention to what's happening in democracy, and we'll get good representative government, and everything will be awesome. And then they'll read my blog and click and send me tips, and I'll be rich too. So democracy makes me rich. Thank you. That's what I hope will happen. That's what should happen. And if we want every school board to make the right decision for their communities, that's what has to happen. We can't mandate that from here. We've all got to be good citizens, participate, and say to our school boards, do the right thing, whatever that right thing is. Yes, sir.
Cory, don't you believe that?
No, I don't believe in it.
Wrong start. There's a real possibility that the Democrats will have more power this next vote for this proposal, either the governors or the Democrats, than they've ever had. It's clear to me that because of the 2/3 majority,
Yep. Yeah, to raise funds of any sort like this, to raise a tax, it has to pass by a 2/3.
either for their own plan or for the governor's plan, are going to be key in getting that passed. It puts an awful lot of pressure on the Democrats up there, I think, because they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. If they promote their own plan, which political reality tells me the Republicans aren't going to do that, then they're going to be almost forced into the corner of supporting the governors. Don't you believe that?
I become physically ill at talking about the practical politics of getting things done in Pierre. But I appreciate your perspective, Danny, because you're absolutely right. There's horse trading to go on, there's calculation to be done. You're right that we've got power because it's pretty clear, I think, that there are going to be a lot of Republicans who aren't just going to go, yeah, let's pass the governor's plan because he said so. There was heartburn last year over the road bill. You can look at some videos I did with like Phil Jensen, that going, this governor is taxing and spending, rah, rah, rah. There isn't 2/3 in the Republican caucus right now. He's going to need Dems to come with. With great power comes great opportunity. If the governor does need us, well, when else are we going to say, hey, Gov, I know you need us. Give us 50.
There you go.
And he says, what? No. He said, you want to pass anything, you're going to give us 50. He says, and maybe we get him to 49.5? We don't know until we ask. We don't know until we ask, but we shouldn't overplay our hand, but we should use the opportunity. We've got an opportunity to do something that the people of South Dakota want and that the governor evidently feels, this is a big enough deal, I better do something or we're going to get beat in the next election. So use the power.
You got to play it smart.
Use the power. Play it smart, but use the power and don't put me in charge of negotiations.
Just a couple of questions. First of all, if this should happen, we know that other things will be looked at. This is a Peter Paul concept he's using. We're going to take away, probably from the smaller districts and give it to the larger ones. This happened in North Dakota. Secondly, we're going to cap funds like the capital outlay. We're going to cap the general fund, so we can break these small districts out of business. And thirdly, Senator Blumenhoff had a good idea when he talked about corporate income tax. Wouldn't be this a good time to drive that home? To accomplish everything and reduce the sales tax on for travel.
I just want to take a moment to goose pimple at that prospect. Someone just said to me, we could do everything. We could. We could. Now, and it's hard for me to be the pragmatist because I'm with you. If we've got the moment, if we've got the power, like Denny said, why not go for it? But I can also look at it and go, you guys are pushing your luck. You got Dennis Dugard to say raise teacher pay, raise taxes, expand Medicaid, and go after corruption. And that's kind of a sidebar. He hasn't really shown he's doing anything serious about it, but I needed 3 points. Always need 3 points, right, extempers? We've got a lot. Whether we can get everything, I'm willing to ask. If I were a legislator, I'd be willing to ask. If I were Bernie Hunhoff, I'd be willing to ask. Even I don't know if we can get there, but it's definitely worth considering. And I'm with you, I'm talking about other funding mechanisms. As for small school consolidation, see, that's the tricky thing. Nothing in this plan explicitly calls for it, but you recognize the hammer it's putting on the smaller districts.
There's a different student-teacher ratio too for small school districts.
Yes, I mean, they arrange it in the formula. The question is, like, for the small schools, the target ratio would be 12.5 to 1 in the governor's plan, and then 15.0 for the bigger schools in the governor's plan. I think the Democratic plan knocks off half a point for each one, right?
Yeah, the governor's plan certainly puts a larger percentage increase on smaller schools. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so, and the thing, and I don't know if this helps, and I'm maybe not answering your question directly. I recognize that there is a Peter and Paul thing. We're being asked to pay for this by making the small schools pay. They're going to bear a bigger burden. I'm almost inclined to say there are worse things the governor could have asked for. He could have hung merit pay on this. He could have hung getting rid of continuing contract on this to just kill the union once and for all. He could have hung more tests on this. He could have hung a number of conservative gewgaws and boogeymen on this thing. The fact that he's not even mandating a minimum school size, he's just doing the indirect student-teacher ratio thing, it's still not good. And I hope I'm not sounding callous to people from small schools. I mean, I taught at Montrose when they were floating around 200 and the state was talking about making 200 the minimum size for a school. I love the small schools and I don't want them to go. But I'd still rather have that argument in negotiations about, okay, what can we do to protect the small schools a bit more, like do the Democratic plan, rather than arguing all the other hot-button conservative stuff that you might have piled on this. But you're right, there are problems with this plan. We're not going to get anything for free here, and we just have to be ready to talk about it. See what the small schools, see what the legislator's going to say.
One more.
One more. Joan, got to talk to beautiful ladies.
You know, Cory, you mentioned a while back about EB5. At our county meeting here on the first of the month, we had speakers say that between EB5 and Year Up, there's $129 million unaccounted for. Nobody knows where it is. What couldn't that have done for teachers and education?
There are numerous arguments to go down that road, absolutely. And this is my handout to legislative candidates. Not that you need me, you're already doing the work. But if you want a line to talk about when you're campaigning, I mean, your speeches are written. If you're running for legislature, your speeches are written. You talk about Gear Up, Go Ed, and Jason Gant. You talk about money stolen from Indian kids in Gear Up. You talk about money stolen from South Dakota with the EB5 plan. And you talk about flags stolen from Secretary Gant's office. That flag will iconify things. But what you do is you say to them on that money side, you say, folks, the libertarians among us, my libertarian friends, my cousin Aaron, not my wife Aaron, the beautiful one, my cousin Aaron, the crazy one. My libertarian cousin Aaron says taxation is theft. I say, no, folks, taxation isn't theft. Taxation is the price of civilization. Taxation is the price of good schools and roads and parks. Corruption is theft. Corruption is when certain friends of the people in power take money that we've paid thinking we'd get civilization, thinking we'd get schools and roads and teachers and parks and police and good things that we all enjoy, money we've paid that we thought would get us public goods, and that money goes into private pockets. Corruption is the real theft. Taxation is the price we pay and we expect a return on it. Corruption is theft from us. Corruption is what Republicans do, and that's why we want to elect Democrats to the legislature next year so we can end that theft and get the public goods we're entitled to. Do that, Tom. Do that. Thank you, Tom.
Y'all come back now. Cheers.